Welcome to the Todd and Taylor Show. I'm Taylor Trask.
I'm Todd A.
And hey, we're back. It's been a long time since one of these has come out. I don't know, 3 months? Since Wonder Woman, I think, was the last time we did this.
That was only June, actually. So it's really just been 2 months. Yeah, June 6th.
It feels like a while because we were doing this weekly for a good while there, and then we sort of stopped. You know, we have other shows that we're doing too. So it was a good time to jump back into the Todd and Taylor Show, dust off the show, so to speak, and get into some stuff and catch up. You and I have kind of had a busy summer, so I don't even think we've talked about some of your travels much.
That's true.
You know, there's been a lot of stuff on my side too, but I guess let's just jump right in. Since we last spoke, you went to San Diego Comic-Con.
I did. Yeah, it's somewhat of a religious journey for me every year. Like it or not, I go.
And every year I don't go and hate myself for it. So that needs to be corrected soon. I think maybe even next year.
That's interesting. I mean, every year I watch the excitement of people who, you know, are going for the first time or whatever, or the disappointment of people who don't get to go, like, you know, can't get tickets or something. There's some terrible expense or something. So I definitely feel a bit privileged that I get to go. I don't ever want to dismiss it, but I see it from a different viewpoint, I guess. So, you know, like I love it. And actually the last 2 years have been some of the most enjoyable times I've gone, specifically because of my friends going and the way we've arranged it. And we're older and we have regular jobs. And so we eat regular food and we go to bed at regular hours and we stay in a friend's house, a little outside of the downtown area. So we're close, but we're out of the hubbub, and it's a very different experience, I think, than what people envision as San Diego Comic-Con, with, you know, a lot of cheap meals and packed hotel rooms with friends and, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. We've done whole episodes about Comic-Con in the past, but for new listeners,
3 whole episodes last year, if people want to look those up.
Oh my God. But for new listeners or those who've forgotten, you're not a Hall H kind of guy, right? You sort of,
no,
you stay out of the big, huge stuff. You kind of do the deep dive and kind of the parts of Comic-Con that aren't quite as noted or highlighted, let's just say.
Well, yeah, that's true. I think, Hall H and Ballroom 20 are the really big, huge venues, and you got to wait all night, and and then you're pretty much committed for the day, because if you've waited 13 hours to get into this thing, why would you leave after the first panel and that kind of stuff. So I do. I don't do that. I'm probably more sane for it. I don't even have a good read on Hall H this year. It did not seem as, I mean, it's always packed and booming, but it didn't seem like as newsworthy or something.
No,
it didn't seem like there was a bunch of hype that came to Hall H.
Totally. Yeah. It really was kind of devoid. I don't think I saw a single thing that was like, oh my God, you guys. I know, granted, there were some really cool, trailers and stuff, but we've come to the point now where, for the most part, Avengers Infinity War excluded, Comic-Con trailers go live to the public almost like day and date. Like we get them on YouTube almost that exact same minute, which is great.
And which is honestly better, because the whole excitement of the panel ought to be like whom you're seeing there and what they say. It ought to be more about that, that experience that you can't duplicate somewhere else. And I think that's what's been wrong in the past, is that it's been all about like, we're going to see some preview of this, it's like if there's the Doctor Who thing, it's like we're going to see the first preview of the next season. Although I'm sure the Doctor Who people were very excited to see the cast, but it's like the Game of Thrones panel this year. There was a lot of news that came out of it, but the season had actually started the Sunday before, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So, it's if it's your first time going and you find out there's something cool going on in Hall H, by all means, like, wait it out. I've been in Hall H for a bunch of stuff, but just have not the past several years done the overnight thing. I've never done the overnight thing. So.
Well, give me your punch list, your greatest hits of SDCC 2017. What really struck out?
So Thursday, was my first day down there. And I had seen the night before that a man I greatly admire, John Hodgman. You know him as I'm a PC from the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC commercials, but he's also been in literally all of my favorite sitcoms, Bored to Death and 30 Rock. And I would bet he's even in Flight of the Conchords somewhere or something.
Oh, probably.
And he's, and he's an author and he's a podcast host of this amazing podcast called Judge John Hodgman, where he literally dispenses like such fair and kind wisdom to people. Anyway, I'd just seen the night before on his Instagram that he was headed to Comic-Con. I thought, what is this? And he had a signing Thursday at 11 a.m. I was the fourth person in line and handed a little Post-it note on which to write my name so that he would not misspell it. And then, I just stood there at the corner of the table and there were just three people in front of me and they gave us a sample chapter, like a cool little sort of zine looking printout of this chapter from his new book. And he numbered all of them. So mine is SDCC 004. And, he asked me if the A was mandatory in the, and I said, yes, it is. There are a lot of Todds in my peer group. I was born in the 70s. So it was a big name back then. And so he signed it to Todd, quotation marks A, and then put the best of the Todds. And, it's just like I had a brief moment where I said, I look forward to summertime fun time, Judge John Hodgman, because I want to hear more about your bailiff's, shamey is what his bailiff calls nudity. And John kind of chuckled politely and said, wow, it's been a year already since we discovered that. And, so I had my moment with John Hodgman. And then did
he have the Old West sheriff's beard and hat?
Oh, yeah. He has this crazy beard, and lately what he's been wearing in, I assume, promotion of this book of his, Vacation Land, is sort of a ball cap that generally has like Vermont or some other New England state logo on it or something. And then he also had a jaunty tennis sweater tied around his neck, which he put on just as he was sitting down, like in plain view of all of us. We watched him get into costume. But then he also walked the floor, we all discovered later, with Adam Savage of Mythbusters, both of them dressed as Chewbacca's. So there were two Chewbaccas, which, as all of you Ween fans out there, was a great callback.
Man, he's lost weight too. I almost didn't recognize him in his picture. Yeah, like he looks very different.
I think he's looked that way for a while, but I feel like people just don't see him as much.
That's true. Yeah.
He the beard really slims him down, I guess.
Gotcha.
It's funny because the chapter of the book that he gave us is actually about the beard, or that's how it starts.
That's a really cool find though. Like that's again.
Oh yeah, that's what I live for with Comic-Con. That to me is the reason for going.
Yeah, and instead of like waiting in a 13-hour line, you're seeing a really cool cultural kind of icon.
Yeah, on the convention hall floor, on the exhibit hall floor, just at the Random House booth. So that's the thing to look for. People, I think, get, and now I when I say people, I mean the public that sees the news footage of everyone in costume and in giant lines. The people in the hall know what's up. Like if you go to Comic-Con, you'll pretty quickly learn like where the magic is. But I'm just telling all of you who have not been, like, that's the real fun of it, is like finding those things you really connect with and having that special moment with them, and over the years, like I've had a bunch of those and it's been very cool. And, so anyway, that happened. And then I walked over to, I forgot the name of the publisher, but where my friends were in line to get Berkeley Breathhead, who does Bloom County, they were, getting autographs from him. He has done this the last 2 years. And it's just, my friends have gotten like the new collection and then they get him to sign it. And one of my friends was getting it for his girlfriend's mom, this collection, because she loves it. And he said, yeah, actually, I got you to autograph this last year for my girlfriend's mom. And, so I'm doing this one again. And Berkeley signed it like, you weren't here again. Very, very frustrated.
Oh,
and, it was like, oh man, there's your cool little moment with Berkeley Breathhead, and so then we go back to this is like, seriously, this is 11:15 in the morning on Thursday. We go back to my friend Eric Coda, who is now for the second year had a booth in Artist Alley. We go back to his booth and kind of shove our loot under the table. and we're walking out to get lunch. And I pass in Artist Alley John Holmstrom, who is the artist behind Punk Magazine, which is the magazine that named punk rock in America. And Legs McNeil was like sort of the big writer for punk, and John was the illustrator, and you've seen his work on like Ramones album covers, and it just, you would recognize his style immediately. It's this very goofy sort of cartoony look of, punk rock. And he's sitting there with this huge, like best of punk, like giant coffee table book that's gorgeous. And he also has this awesome Ramones, like the Ramones New York poster where it's all in his cartoon style, like showing the areas of New York that are important to the Ramones. And I'm sitting there, I'm standing there with my friend. We're walking out of the hall and I see this, and I'm like, oh, I know I want one of these things. Let's go to lunch and I'll figure it out. And then I just go, nope, get in the book. So I say that to John. I say, yeah, I want to get that book. And he had shown me the poster, and I told him, yeah, I saw this poster when I was at the Ramones exhibit at the Grammy Museum, and John Holmstrom goes at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles. And I'm like, yeah, in Los Angeles. I start telling him about it, and he's clearly didn't know that they were using his work in this exhibit. There's this moment of like concern I felt from him, like, what? And I know, it's just another of those, like, hey, I just gave this dude that I totally admire some information he didn't previously have. And there's my special connection with him. And
they're just like us.
He signs the book to me and says, puts a little cartoon in it, says, don't punk out, which was what he was signing to everybody I know. But it was still a very like special moment. And so then I have to walk back to Eric's table because this book is so effing huge and heavy, and I'm not going to lug it to lunch with us. So at Thursday we go to lunch, and I was like, you know what? It's gravy at this point. I'm good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like Eric's table is Eric needs to start charging rent for all these
don't give me any ideas.
You're putting at his table. Like, good Lord. I mean, that's incredibly helpful.
Oh yeah. It's a huge help. Exactly. These are, and again, like I feel like kind of like a spoiled brat when I have these experiences with con, because I know people are just lugging this stuff around or standing in the heat in these lines, or they got to, go back to some sweaty hotel, and I've got this cushy pad to crash at. But like, I had all those experiences. In fact, all my friends did. We've been doing this. This was my 10th consecutive year.
Dang,
so I feel like, yeah, if anything, I've paid my dues. Like we all have, like, we're still sleeping on air mattresses and stuff. It's just that we get to go to bed at 10 p.m. So
you would have started going when you and I first met, or around that time.
I went, the first year I moved to California, I was able to buy tickets without pre-registering, just like 3 months in advance.
Wow. That was only that long ago. Like, I would have expected that would be like one of those stories you hear about the early 90s. Like, oh yeah. I mean,
oh my God. And it's so frustrating too. 2008, actually.
Okay.
Because this year would be the 10th.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
You used to be able, like, even then you would buy a ticket. So on Thursday, I bought my ticket months in advance because they did sell out. But I walked in on Thursday and I would get my badge, and they would say, do you want to buy next year's ticket?
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, of course I do. So you would just buy the next year's ticket at check-in.
Jesus.
And I don't understand why they stopped that practice. It's like, dude, you had your income was just guaranteed on day one of what you were going to have the next year, at least, Yeah. I've never understood that practice. I wish they would grandfather. And,
when did they stop doing it? What year?
It kind of trickled out. Like, I probably did it 2 years in a row that way. And then the next year there was like an off-site place where you had to go buy your ticket. And then the next year you had to go wait in a line off-site. And then there was just this like hilarious nightmare year where my friend Martin and I, at whose house I stay, we ran down in the morning, like before everyone left the house, and we said, we're just going to pick up next year's tickets. We'll be back. And we literally got locked in a room in the basement of a hotel with no cell service for like 4 hours.
Oh my God.
Because they just stuck you in a line. And, we haven't showered, we haven't eaten. We're sitting there like just losing our minds, like in this basement, knowing like if we leave, no tickets for next year. And we were in charge of buying like everybody's tickets.
Oh, Jesus.
So it was an awful experience. And so It's just, yeah, they've been just, increasing the Milgram experiment on us every year.
No, seriously. Wow.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell you the other thing that is of huge note to you is that on Friday I went to an Image Comics panel called Excellence in Storytelling. It was a small panel, but it had Nick Dragata, Marjorie Liu, Dustin Nguyen, Mark Bernardin, Bernardin, and Amy Reeder and Greg Hinkle. And it was awesome. I mean, it was just a very low key panel where these are all artists talking about how they tell stories through art.
I mean, I would have wanted just Nick Dragata alone.
He said the coolest shit. Man,
that guy,
it was so cool. Like, and that was actually the great thing was everyone had a totally different perspective. Marjorie Liu actually is not an artist, I don't believe. I think she's the writer of Monstress. But Dustin Nguyen is this, I mean, he does these amazing like watercolor paintings. He's doing a book called Descender now, which actually, have I told you about that? You might really love this.
No.
And Amy Reeder does something called Rocket Girl, which within like one panel of it, I went, well, I got to buy all of those. It was like sold. And they actually didn't have it at the booth when I went downstairs. So I have still not acquired it, but I definitely will. And Amy Reeder said cool stuff about like she'll work in Photoshop, but she doesn't like using SketchUp to do like 3D models and stuff like that because she's seen some people really go a little too crazy with SketchUp. And then Greg Hinkle jumps in and was like, I use SketchUp all the time. And then Nick Dragata would talk about like just, exactly what you've heard, because Taylor and I have talked about this on past podcasts, that graphic design element. Like they showed some panel where, half of it is literally the sound effect and this huge slanted type, like, like a kaboom kind of sound effect. And, somebody asked, like, did the letterer do that? Or did you do that? How did this come up? And he was like, no, I designed that. And here's how I did it using the lasso tool and, cutting out all these pieces so that it would fit in the drawing. And it's like, holy shit, that's amazing. And then just all the stories he has of, oh my God, remind me of East versus West. Is it Hickman that writes it?
East of West is Hickman and then Dragata.
Yeah. So Hickman would go to him and describe a panel and Dragata would be like, no. Here's what we're going to do. And it was just cool stuff about, somebody asked about the robot horses and he was like, well, it's like we want to put everybody on a horse. It's kind of futuristic and the head's the hardest thing to draw. So I just lopped off all the heads. So there you go. There's your robot horse.
It sounds like it sounds like Norm Macdonald. The robots in the future is cut their heads off. Right?
But just so like informative and straight to the point. And Dustin Nguyen has done really awesome work. I've got a bunch of prints of his and like sketchbooks and stuff where he had done a bunch of Batgirl covers that I loved back prior to the new 52, I guess, when Stephanie Brown was Batgirl. And then he did this thing called Lil Gotham, which is all watercolor, like tiny little Batman characters. And it's just like this beautiful style. And hearing him talk about Descender, where you would think here's this artist who is so careful because he's doing it all in watercolor and it's got to be just perfect for comics. And he would say things like, yeah, that's, like I just literally threw the paint at the canvas on this one and just hoped it would sort of land in a good explosive way. And then I went back and figured out how to do the rest of the panel. And, there were things like where he was like, yeah, well, I'll smudge this up, but it's Image. And they're not like super big on, consistency or whatever, so I knew I could get away with it. It's creator owned, basically. It's not like he said it's not like working on one of those titles like Batman where the major publisher has owned this property for 70 years and they're exact about Batman's eyebrow or something. So it was just super cool. And Mark Bernardin he's the writer of a book called Genius, and so so he and Marjorie were the writers on the panel, and they just said great stuff too. It was awesome. So that's my roundup. I hope I didn't run too long on that Image thing, but that was
oh God, no, but again, for anyone listening, if you want to have a good Comic-Con experience, tweet Todd and just ask him what to do, because it's just like every time you come back, you offer this like other version of it's almost like a Comic-Con from another world.
Oh, I'll tell you, like that's great to hear. And honestly, tweet at me even if you just want to know like where to eat. Or where the clean bathrooms are.
Yeah. Good call.
Your survival tips for Comic-Con. But I, totally credit my friend Chris Martin. You know him as the singer of Coldplay, but he took that. He was the one who found that panel, and I tagged along, and then we ran into two of our other friends there, who'd obviously had the same idea. He did make me pay for that decision by walking me around the entire goddamn convention floor.
Well,
trying to find the room, but it totally paid off in the end. And Chris also, I don't know, maybe it was Thursday afternoon or Friday, one of those days where we'd never done this before. But he just said, I kind of figured at some point this afternoon, I'm going to take a break. Let's go up to that gaming room. So we went to this game room, which, it's just a crazy side of Comic-Con where you don't think about it's on like the mezzanine level, so a lot of people just sort of pass through it going to the exhibit floor on the bottom or the rooms on the top. And a bunch of people who basically kickstarted games are there with their game, hoping you'll play it with them. So we played this game, which I will Google when you're talking in a minute, and so I can plug it. But so we played a game with its inventor, it's just like what a unique experience. It's like just me, Chris, and the inventor of this game teaching us how to play it. It was called Overlords of Infamy. And Chris ended up buying it because the Kickstarter had ended, but they said, if you want to put in an order now, we'll give you the Kickstarter price and whatever. And so Chris did it. So
see, that's the area of Comic-Con, that's sort of the vein of Comic-Con that I most appreciate, is just kind of the celebration of creativity in that way. Like the whole thing is that, at the end of the day, but like seeing a floor where people are literally like, I'm making this, I want to talk to you about making this thing. Like, that's just so cool. Like that. I love that.
Well, I'll tell you, we have got to, it can't be this year, obviously, because it happens in like 3 weeks, but we got to do like a Dragon Con thing too. I've been once, and it is you cannot overstate what a different kind of experience it is. Honestly, Taylor and I would go to everybody's Comic-Con and just report back on them if any of these Comic-Cons want to employ us and just fly us around to report on what the cool stuff is.
I'm pretty convinced you and I are going to do Denver.
We'll be there. Yeah, not reporting, but actually
we will be there for
exhibiting or something. But I mean, Dragon Con, Comic-Con is growing out. Actually, there's many more official Comic-Con events that are in the hotels around. Dragon Con is just this labyrinth of rooms, like where different areas are. Like Artist Alley is nowhere near sort of the toy exhibit floor, which is nowhere near like where the games are and stuff like that. It's really crazy. Comic-Con feels navigable and understandable because it's one giant convention center, and then it's kind of like, hey, there's extracurricular stuff outside of that. And in fact, I can't believe I forgot this. So Friday afternoon, Eric Coda and I went to the Best of Earwolf panel, because Eric and I are fans of several different Earwolf podcasts, but it was Paul F. Tompkins and Paul Scheer and oh my God, who else was there? Holy shit, I can't believe I just blanked out on everyone. The guy that runs it all, Scott Aukerman.
Oh yeah.
And it was just so cool. I mean, I'm a huge fan of How Did This Get Made, obviously, and they ran it like the end of a How Did This Get Made, where they barely introed it at all. And Paul Scheer just took the mic and came out into the crowd and started asking questions. And
that's cool.
Eric, of course, was totally amused. And I was terrified because we were certain that Paul Scheer was just going to beeline to me with a question. And as soon as he stepped in the audience, I knew that was going to happen. And my brain went entirely blank, as it did, when talking to John Hodgman. Like, I just can't form words. And because Eric took me to a Comedy Bang Bang show many years ago in LA, and I was pulled on stage once, and then a couple hours later, Thomas Lennon came and sat in my lap to sing A Christmas Carol. It was incredibly awkward. And Eric, of course, is untouched, unscathed. No one embarrasses him, and he's right next to me in the front row. And then I was pulled on stage at a Penn and Teller show. Like, this is just a thing with me where it's like,
you just have one of those faces.
Yeah, this will mortify him. Let's get him up here.
Or they're like, hey, he's gonna be a pretty agreeable guy. He'll be into this. Like, you never know.
Paul Scheer walks all the way, like he walks down the row where Eric's on the end of the row. Of course, Eric can easily be gotten to. He walks down that row all the way around the back, then comes down to the row that I'm in. Like, and I'm the only person, but I'm way in the center. And it looks totally like he's just going to walk in. Luckily, there's someone right behind me in the row behind me, dressed like the devil, like totally skin painted red in a polo shirt from, I guess it's a show, Your Pretty Little Face is Going to Hell. And so obviously he couldn't even concentrate on me because he had to go straight for that guy. So thank God I was spared.
The devil saved you, is what you're saying.
But I do go see a live taping of How Did This Get Made next week, so possibly I'll get embarrassed then. But anyway, yeah. So I'll wrap that up. It was great podcasting stuff, and some people asked for their advice, and their number one advice was get good microphones. Like, don't try to do it on, shitty microphones. Their other big top advice was don't do any Skype calls or, remote stuff. Just do a podcast with the guy that's in the city, or your neighbor, someone who lives in the same city as you. So we're breaking out those rules.
Yeah, that's all right.
We should jump into trailers that we saw.
We should, because a lot of these came out during SDCC.
And I wanted to ask you about one that I did not actually see and totally forgot about, but that's Ready Player One. You were a big fan of the book. How does the trailer make you feel about the movie? Are you?
Well, let's just say before I jump in with my thoughts, it's worth noting that the trailer has been largely divisive online, where a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, it's the greatest thing! It's Steven Spielberg's second coming." A lot of other equal amount of people are like, "Oh no, this isn't the book at all." And I'm in that camp. And granted, it's just more of a teaser trailer, but I saw this and I'm like, they are painting the picture of a different story entirely here. Like, there are scenes from the book, sure, but just the way they've teed it up, like it almost makes it sound. The whole point of the book is that it's a quest, basically, to find this thing that's gonna give this kid, the future he always wanted. And in the midst of kind of a dystopian future of our own, he goes into this VR world and has all these adventures, but it's towards an end. This makes it seem like this is just like almost kind of like, a kid's version of Tron, where it's just like, crazy things happen, like without any kind of purpose or like, I'll be very curious to see what the next one is. And granted, the movie is a year away, for sure. So we've got time, but I just wasn't, for all my anticipation, I just was not thrilled with the final product.
Interesting. Yeah, that's I wonder, do you get a vibe from what you've seen? Is it a reader viewer split? Like, are there people that just kind of are coming to this as Spielberg fans, or sort of geek fans and video game fans and think that the trailer looks cool, or is it just not that clean of a split? Or there's some book readers?
I can't say definitively. I'm going to venture a guess that the split is pretty much along book or reader non-reader lines. I can't, because I can't rationalize how else a book reader would say, "Oh, that was great," and just like you really can't. If you know and love the book as I do, it was missing. It was missing that quest aspect to it. It just seemed like it almost seemed like just like a music video, unless like there just wasn't any intimation of story. Now maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't. I don't know. But a trailer that was kick ass, that was amazing, that blew me away, made me even more excited to see something that I was already excited for. Thor Ragnarok.
Oh my God.
They dropped the newest trailer there, and Jesus, like, just, it's like they finally figured out, and I'm somebody who actually really dug the Kenneth Branagh first one and actually appreciated the second one. But it feels like they kind of figured out finally how to really make a Thor movie.
Yeah, that when you got to think back to like when Branagh did the first one, like we were right in the middle of the Dark Knight trilogy. Superheroes were supposed to be dark. I mean, the second Thor was literally called The Dark World.
True.
And and in the Avengers movies, they figured out like, no, it's much funnier. And I think because of the Ghostbusters film with Hemsworth in that as the sort of airhead, that it's like, but this guy's good at that. Let's give him this tone that's funny,
Yeah.
And honestly, the other success is the thing you've pointed out, which is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh God,
which completely upended the tone of all these Marvel movies.
If there's ever a movie to be a beneficiary of the Guardians of the Galaxy sort of tonal shift, it's going to be Thor. I mean, Thor Ragnarok looks like it is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 starring Thor. Like it has, the colors, the sort of, just crazy, just crazy space stuff. The designs look, completely out there. And just the fact that they put Hulk in it, just like that. And I'll tell you this, every time I see that freaking Kate Blanchett Hela headdress thing, like every time I see it, I'm spellbound by it. Cause I'm like, number one, how much does that thing weigh? She's physically, like, she's wearing it on her head. Like, how did they design that thing? Like, how is that possible? Like, just little things like that continue to just inspire me. And of course, as we've talked about on episodes past, directed by Taika Waititi, who, if you love Flight of the Conchords, I'm pretty sure will love this. I can't wait to put my bet on who Jermaine Clement, what is his last name?
Jermaine Clement, yeah.
Jermaine Clement is going to play in a cameo, inevitable cameo in this. I mean, he's going to be in there somewhere.
I feel like Goldblum is playing the role normally played by Jermaine.
By Jermaine. I wonder if Taika Waititi tried to cast Jermaine at first, and they're like, "Yeah, we need a bigger name." And they're like, "Okay, Goldblum." I don't know. I feel like he's going to sneak him in because like those guys, and maybe even Murray too. Maybe Murray makes his way into there. I just
I would. Yeah, there could be just the tone, he could make it work and make it fit. I think that's so wonderful. And I'll tell you I'm totally going to get this quoted wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Waititi said this is not part of like another Thor movie. Like this is very much like a standalone Thor, which I assume was put out there to say, this is not necessarily leading into Planet Hulk or something like that.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But I think that kind of frees it up. Like, it fits in the universe. And I think I assume that, it's going to end and then sort of dovetail into what we're going to talk about next. But, it's great that it's a standalone movie and it's not,
I think he also said that though to kind of because clearly they lost Natalie Portman, they lost Jamie Alexander, they've lost some regulars here, so it's I think they're like it's its own movie just so that you forget the people who used to be in it. Kat Denning's not in it either. Stellan Skarsgård isn't in it either. Like it's all those people are gone. For one reason.
They're all wonderful actors that I really like, but I'm not shedding any tears over them not being in this Thor movie.
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, how could I? Goldblum, Blanchett,
Yeah. But
Ruffalo.
Yeah, Ruffalo. Another trailer that came out / didn't officially come out, but
I don't think this was Comic-Con. I think this was D23.
It was D23, but they showed it again at SDC.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then I think they may have added like one slight tweak to it too or something. But in both cases, it never showed up online in any official capacity. I happened to sneak a peek of it from somebody's a pirated cell phone video. Of course, we're talking about Infinity War, the upcoming Avengers movie, and that's I will say that
which opens with Thor, because I watched that pirated or not pirated but cell phone clip.
Yeah,
and it opens with Thor like running into the Guardians of the Galaxy spaceship, correct?
Yeah,
and I believe he's in sort of the garb of Ragnarok, so that's why I think it starts right there.
Yeah, and let's hope so because let me ask you this quick aside. Does Black Panther come out before or after Infinity War?
Great question. I'm going to look that up.
Because the way I'm looking at it, Ragnarok should be the last movie beforehand, but it's looking like Black Panther's going to be.
Black Panther is next February.
Yeah, so it's going to come before Infinity War.
Infinity War is May. Yeah. And Ant-Man and the Wasp is next July. So.
Well, but all this to be said, like there's some major story that needs to be like some track that needs to be laid to get us cleanly to Infinity War. And I feel like Ragnarok is the best case. I mean, they're gonna have to cram a lot into it, but if Hela's taking the place of Death, that will tease her in terms of Thanos's motivations. Yes,
you're kind of working backwards from the comic book plot, and I'm sort of optimistic that they just won't really try to make that fit.
But even so, like, it just seems like, hey, this movie that's already in space, it ties into the next main villain who's going to be from space. Like, it seems weird to go, hey, we're going to come back to Earth to secret Africa to show you this, which is going to be kick ass. Like, don't get me wrong. Like the footage or trailer they showed. Wait, did another Black Panther trailer come out during Comic-Con?
I believe it's just the long one that we saw. I think it was.
They showed footage.
Yeah. That's right. They showed finished footage that the cast had not seen.
And everybody was
great
losing
videos
their
of
mind.
them. Yeah, of the cast actually losing their mind. Yeah.
So all that being said, like, it's going to be kick ass, but like, it's going to be a little jarring to be like, okay, this wonderful new hero on Earth now. If that's the last one, now here's Thanos. Like, what? How does that? Because there's going to be some stinger at the end of Black Panther that's for Infinity War. Surely. So like, what is that going to be? I don't know. Going back to the trailer, though,
I've done a quick Google and seen a headline on Screen Rant that says Black Panther is an important factor in Infinity War.
So then that means that must mean the Soul Gem appears there.
Maybe so,
because that's the only Infinity Stone that's left to be revealed. I thought they were all out there, but the Soul Gem is. Oh, whoa!
I didn't even realize this because I haven't read Infinity War. That Wakanda is actually attacked in Infinity War by Thanos and the Black Order.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, there we go.
I guess that's an easy way to tie it in if they want to.
So going back to the trailer, like, granted, we were seeing it through a shaky cell phone cam, but it just didn't. Something about it seemed off to me. It just seems like they're going to be cramming so much goddamn CGI into this thing that it's not going to feel real. It's not going to feel like anything that I'm that excited to see. And I just, and granted, that shot of him activating the glove and then like throwing down the moon or whatever the hell that was, that's going to be cool. But it's the whole thing. Even Josh Brolin, I mean, he is a CGI mocap, character in terms of Thanos. So I'm just like, man, there's so much CGI. Well, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I thought it looked good, but I did do that thing where I went, am I really watching the right thing? Like I only knew it was right because of the shaky cell phone part of it, because there are those things where you'll look for on YouTube, like, new Black Panther trailer, and you'll get something that someone has cut together. Of those actors or something.
Yeah. No, it did have that feel. It totally had that vibe
like
where it's like
Iron Man. There's sort of an Iron Man scene that appears out of nowhere, and there's kind of flips around to like each different character. And I felt like, we're not getting a good sense of how they operate together. But I mean, I'm just giving them credit because they've done so many other good movies. So
but let's take this as a contrast. That came out, and everybody's like, we want to see the real one, and Marvel's like, no, not yet. And yet we saw it and commented on it. And then the Justice League newest trailer emerges and actually blew me away a little bit. Like, I was really, really pleasantly surprised to see that come out basically the same week that Infinity War came out to those of us who care. I was just like, wow. So we went from Infinity War, which seems like this, for a culmination, seems that trailer. And then granted, it wasn't a trailer for, for the public consumption. I get all that, but it just didn't feel like it was earned. And then here's this Justice League trailer, which is like, oh my God, it's showing me stuff I didn't know I wanted. Like, I am now more interested in Justice League than Infinity War. Who would have thought that'd ever be the case?
Is it Iron Man fatigue or Captain America fatigue?
No, because I still think you could do a killer Iron Man movie. I just think it's just so. Marvel has been around so long now that there's a little bit of just fatigue in that sense. But they've forgotten to make daring choices like in the way they used to. Well, and by that I mean Doctor, and maybe it's going to change, but like Doctor Strange was not. I mean, it was very much a paint by numbers Marvel movie. Even as much as I enjoyed it, as did you, Ant-Man, paint by numbers Marvel movie. Like, I will
with that.
I'll argue almost beat for beat that thing matches Iron Man 1 in more ways than people want to admit. But that aside, but like they've gotten into this kind of weird groove where I'm just like, you guys are just in cruise control now. Like, I want to see something really, advance the cause. Now, I think Black Panther is going to do that. Like, just that Black Panther trailer alone makes me go, oh my God, this is the direction. But I'll even say Spider-Man Homecoming felt a little just, if we had seen no other Marvel movies before or near it, maybe Spider-Man Homecoming would have blew me away. But I'm just like, I just felt like, man, at this juncture, I've seen this. Like, I've seen this. And yeah, I've seen the Justice League to some extent too in other movies and things. But this trailer, like, they're putting Wonder Woman in, front and center, rightfully so. We all predicted that would happen.
I do wonder if that's just for the trailer and if it's going to turn out like it's Batman's movie.
I think they were already angling pretty hard to make it his and her movie, but I think now in editing and reshoots and stuff, it's going to be a lot of her.
I sure hope so. I mean, biggest movie of the summer, right? Wonder Woman. So.
Oh yeah, so far, and so and granted, yes, it had its almost beat for beat or shot for shot remake of Loki landing in Avengers. Only this time it was Steppenwolf landing on Themyscira, but. Then it's like, you're like, holy shit, he's on Themyscira. Why? Like, why is he starting there? Like, I love that they're bringing the Amazonians into this at that level. Like, they're almost like the protectors of Earth. Just like, they're just, everything I saw in that trailer made me go, I am super duper anxious. And if they can somehow convince me that Superman's not going to be resurrected evil for, the duration of the movie until the very end, like, I'll be even more excited. Like, if he just comes back and is like the most good, fun version of himself, I think we'll all shed a tear of joy. I for some reason that trailer, it just hit me in all the right ways, and I don't know if Joss Whedon had anything to do with that. I don't know if that was just part of the plan the whole time, but it had a different fun feel. Even that scene at the end where Gordon is up with the bat signal, and and then he turns around and the Flash is just standing there. And he's like, oh,
it's great that the Flash is the one that doesn't disappear.
Yeah, right. And it's just
that's kind of rude, isn't it?
And they all just kind of like, and I just, that was always kind of that character's deal. But I feel like maybe they kind of, even before Joss Whedon, maybe they kind of had figured out the right formula here, which is not, the advantage it's going to have is that it's going to have a little bit more straight edge than Marvel stuff does. I think Marvel almost errs on the side of too much levity. Well, I think this might be.
Let me throw a weird theory out there that I honestly haven't given much thought to. It's just occurring to me as you're talking about this. And you and I are apologists for Zack Snyder movies.
Yes, of course.
But with the exception of Superman v. Batman, Bat Soup, he's actually done a bunch of great ensemble movies. I mean, Watchmen does a great job of introducing those characters, even if you don't like the movie. Like the way that it moves through the characters and really establishes them, I think does a pretty good job.
Oh, you're so right.
Sucker Punch, maybe not so much, but it is still a group effort in a way. Like, it's a super group. I mean, even 300 felt more like a group. Like, I didn't go into that thinking it was what's his name's starring role. Like, I really thought he was just sort of the lead of this band of people. Who am I trying to think of? I'm going to say Russell Crowe, but Gerard Butler.
Yeah, Gerard Butler. God, where did he go?
And so maybe just the trick was that, like, Man of Steel and Bat Soup didn't actually have enough characters in the ensemble for him. And maybe Justice League has just maybe he really is good at that ensemble cast. And that's, and hopefully they did take some notes from like how badly Suicide Squad was received and things like that, and went, we need to lighten this up, and we've got some good opportunities to do that with Flash, and we've got good opportunities to show a different kind of leadership with Wonder Woman, and let this, the tough guy role be played by Aquaman or something. Even though I do wish there were like Hawkman or something, or even Plastic Man instead of Cyborg. I'm not a big Cyborg fan.
Plastic Man! Oh my god! I feel like I was a big Teen Titan, the first Teen Titan cartoon. The WB animated series that they were doing. I mean, they're on the like 5th Teen Titan iteration now, but that first one was great. And the way they treated Cyborg in that, I always thought was awesome. So I'm a little bit, my one complaint is that Cyborg seems a little wooden in all these trailers. Like, he's just,
I honestly, that's a big deal. Yeah.
And it's just like, well, all right. I mean, and maybe that was it would have been fun to see him a little bit more Luke Cage-esque. And then he and Flash could, basically pal around together, because he would be as young as Flash. He'd be late
he is
teens,
young,
early 20s.
right?
Yeah,
I don't actually know who's the Flash in Justice League. Is it Wally? Is it
They
Wally
haven't
West?
said yet, have they?
Do we know?
No, Barry Allen.
Yeah, and I will say that like
Just
when I
Barry
was a reader of the Teen Titans, I didn't have like strong feelings about Cyborg. I just once he joined the Justice League, I just didn't quite understand it. Like maybe he was always a Teen Titan to me. But anyway, we should move on from that and talk about
the trailer of trailers. So all those trailers that we saw and mentioned were lovely, except for Ready Player One. I mean, they were great, and alone, each of those alone would have been like, wow, that's great. All of a sudden, Netflix shows up at Comic-Con, and like it's almost like they were sitting there in the audience, like these trailers are playing. They're like, yeah, okay, you think that's just really cute. That's good for you. And they walk up there and they just lay down the biggest goddamn like. I don't even know. Where to even be? It was amazing.
We're talking about the Stranger Things 2 thriller trailer.
Stranger Things goddamn 2, which we were all excited for anyway. Nobody had to convince us to watch that. It wasn't like, they could have thrown up just a teaser card on Netflix and going like, coming.
No. That's such a great thought. They really could have just done that like, that weird music and just had the title kind of surge at us, and we still all would have binged it on October 27th.
Oh God, yeah. That would have been the record-setting thing. But instead, they put together what I consider to be one of the finest trailers in movie history. And this isn't even a movie in the traditional sense. Like this thing, and it was funny too because I think when you and I and Emily were recording a Wednesday in Westeros episode a couple weeks ago. Right after Comic-Con, in fact, I was talking about Thor Ragnarok, and both of you were like, have you seen Stranger Things? I'm like, no. And there was kind of this like pause, this hushed pause.
Oh, yeah. Like, go watch it.
And it's like
right now.
And I consumed it, and it basically ruined the podcast for me because I'm like, that was just haunting my mind the entire time. It was so goddamn good.
It's so good.
It builds. Well, it does the thing that the Ready Player One trailer should have done. It builds this. You get a full sense of the season in every way, shape, and form, in terms of the tone, the raised, the raised stakes. The new Sean Astin's character, like you immediately get a sense of who he is. You're like, oh my god.
It also, to me, answered that question of like, when Stranger Things was over, we were like, what are they going to go back to the same cast of kids?
Yeah,
like
we wanted to be an anthology.
And then if they're going to do that, how are they going to get 11 back into it? Because obviously, like we loved her, we want to see more of her. Mm-hmm. And I felt like this trailer sort of answered that question really definitively. Like, yes, they have more to talk about with, this cast or this group of characters, and there's 11. And it was like, perfect. There's we're not like stuck waiting like, oh, is it just going to be the boys? And like, she's not in it or something. It was like, no, they answered it.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Plus just running it to Thriller, by Michael Jackson.
Oh God!
Especially like the narration by Vincent Price.
Not just Thriller. It was a sort of remixed version.
Yeah.
That starts off and you don't quite know it's Thriller, and then all of a sudden, like Vincent Price's narration comes in, and you're like, oh my God, they're actually doing that. They're actually doing. So not only was just the trailer itself amazing, you get stuck because you're like, oh my God, they're actually doing. They bought Thriller. How does any of this happening?
Well, Netflix is heavily in debt, but I will say at Comic-Con Netflix had like a whole outside experience or something, and they were giving away these cool like trucker caps that were just black and said Stranger Things, on the Stranger Things logo, and we really wanted to get one, and we saw some guy walking out of the experience with one, and we asked about it, and he was like, no, you're literally waiting for like 2 hours just to walk through and see all their trailers.
Wow.
And then they give you the hat, and we were like, nah, we're not gonna wait. Sorry, man. But anyway, let's move on to films and movies and do a quick recap, because we did a great like 2 episodes sort of previewing 2017 movies. So we can kind of catch up with where we are now. Right. Our last Todd Taylor show was about Wonder Woman. We did it with our friend Emily Kelly, who's our co-host on Wednesday in Westeros. And she is also a co-host on Fan Theories, which is another podcast here on findusthere.com or .org. Sorry, findusthere.org. And anyway, you sort of badmouthed this one, but I'm going to start with it. I thought Spider-Man Homecoming was freaking genius.
I didn't badmouth it. I just simply said I simply said, were this another day and time, I might like it more.
I loved it. I mean, you did see the movie, right?
I did. Yeah. Oh, of course.
Well, I walked out of it like, I can't believe I've seen 2 perfect superhero movies, and 3 if you count Guardians of the Galaxy this summer, because that and Wonder Woman. Everything about it to me was like to me it was like they did Mean Girls with a superhero.
Yeah.
And that was everything I didn't know I wanted out of Spider-Man, because I typically think Spider-Man is a douchebag. Yeah. Like, I just generally don't like that superhero. And I do think that the trend for a long time, that trend of making superheroes like darker and darker really, pushed me towards the lighter superheroes and really made me appreciate Ant-Man and Spider-Man and Civil War. But man, I just thought they nailed it. I thought that kid did a great job, and the supporting cast was so awesome, and the action was great, and just and the twist, and we shouldn't give it away, but there is, I don't know if it's a twist, but there is a reveal about 2/3 of the way from it that I had actually heard right before I went in, like, oh, there's a reveal, blah blah blah, and I was like, oh shit, I wish I hadn't even read that there was a reveal, and it still snuck up on me,
really,
and punched me in the gut.
No,
I don't know why. It was just like clever direction in that moment where I went like, oh shit, it was just, I just thought it was such a wonderfully put together movie, and everything I want out of superhero movies. So I'm willing to get over my Spider-Man disgust, and hopefully they can do one that's, maybe not even this good, but just closely good, and we can start to get the taste of those other 5 Spider-Mans out of our mouths.
Now, okay,
awful.
I actually liked Spider-Man 2 with Alfred Molina. You can't.
Yeah.
That thing was.
I remember at the time thinking like that was the perfect superhero movie,
and that had come out very
ruined it all that goodwill. Flushed down the toilet with Spider-Man 3.
Oh, and the same thing with X-Men 2 and X-Men 3. We've discussed this. Like X-Men 2 had come out, Spider-Man 2 had come out. I'm like, oh my god, this is like the golden age. And then they
golden age of superhero movies.
They did like they threw a snowball in our face like twice. Yeah. Just like a hard one too, that they dipped in water and froze into ice. Like, oh, you thought that was fun? Really? Spider-Man Homecoming, I did enjoy it. Right. So let's just make that clear. And I would say, if I'm going to list 3 things that I really, really, really liked about it, Michael Keaton, first and foremost, that guy. What's interesting about that guy is that he has made the most out of his career resurgence, right? Like, he's been in really cool, interesting movies like The Founder and Birdman, but then he's doing stuff like this, and he's bringing a level of like, almost like that Bill Murray kind of calm. Like, Michael Keaton's really settled into who he is as an actor, and it just, you can tell, and it shows. And he's really comfy in that headspace. He also, think about this for a minute. There was a few moments or a few shots where he would do an eyebrow raise or he would deliver a line, and he sounded exactly like Jack Nicholson as the Joker via circa 1989. Like, it was a little bit off-putting here and there, because I'm like, oh my god, are you becoming Jack Nicholson? But just overall, like, Michael, and number 2, he made the Vulture cool. When they were when they were doing the Sam Raimi movies, and they're like, it's going to be Malcolm, or not Malcolm, it's going to be John Malkovich as the Vulture. I'm just like, we don't need to see that. Like, that's not going to be. The Vulture's the least interesting Spider-Man villain in my mind.
And like, I just think this was rescued by Sony making that deal with Marvel.
Yes.
And Marvel going, we know how to do this. It didn't even have to have Iron Man in it. I mean, I actually sort of dreaded too much Iron Man, but
it shouldn't have had any.
I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. I did like that it was more about what's his name, the driver, and his relationship.
Happy. Yeah. Well, it does. It did in that regard. It did provide some nice connective tissue to Avengers 2, which I never thought we'd see. The third thing, though, that I really, really liked about this, that I never expected to, freaking Zendaya as that. My God. She's so good. Yeah, as we found out, MJ, and I'm just like, so the whole movie, Peter's pining after this one, the popular girl. Who happens to be black, which I thought was a nice touch. I'm like, oh, good. It's just we're just gonna go there right now, and in this movie, I love it. and so he's pining after her, and she's kind of like the popular, more refined girl. Meanwhile, Zendaya is playing this other girl who's Peter's kind of friend, and she'll drop these.
I don't think she's anybody's friend.
Well, but she was always kind of there. She was in part of the debate club. She was always kind of around. She was of the group, let's just say. But she'd always drop these kind of lines where you're like, man, she's kind of into Peter. But it would be so subtle and so cute that you just you didn't think, oh, they were trying to run her down our throat. She was just kind of there in the background, just kind of hang and asked to do very little. But what she did just kind of sparkled. And I'm like, Who is she? I want to see her. And then at the end to find out that she is MJ. And I hope even if she's not quote unquote Mary Jane, I hope she's an MJ that Peter basically treats as Mary Jane. Like I would love that to be her, because it's just like she as an actress and that as a character earned that. This by doing what it did in this first movie. And I was just like, I can't. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be as excited about the second one. But I'm like, oh my God, I want a second one just to see if these two hook up. And it's worth noting, Tom Holland and Zendaya are dating in real life now.
Oh, really?
So yeah, you can expect some interesting chemistry if they do put those two together for realsies.
Well, there are a couple other cool things they did. Like I think his name is Flash. Where he was
Flash
in
Thompson.
The movie he's but he's Manuel in the movie, and he's just kind of like this douchebag that's like, but he's not like a jock douchebag, I guess, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
No,
he's like the DJ guy at the party,
in
right?
The comics and in the early Spider-Man movies, Flash Thompson is like, the big buff bully guy. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, you're the classic, like, push you in your locker, Parker.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that guy. You're that guy.
And this guy's just kind of like a douchebag.
Yeah, but he is Flash. He is Flash Thompson in Spider-Man Homecoming, and they've turned him into this kind of like rich Indian yuppie guy.
No, that's what I mean. Like he's not the jock stereotype. He's just this like. Yeah, kind of.
He's a bully in a 2017 sense, right? And that he's the DJ at the dance. He's one of the smart preppy guys on the debate team. He's constantly trying to just single out Peter and like rip on him. Not physical intimidation, but like mental and sort of social intimidation, which I really like too.
I'll tell you my favorite cast addition, which I didn't even get this Easter egg when I was watching the movie. Is Jennifer Connelly as Karen, the voice of Spider-Man's Iron Man suit.
That's right.
And of course, Jennifer Connelly is the wife of Paul Bettany. And Paul Bettany was the voice of Jarvis, and now Vision in the Iron Man movies.
That's great.
Jarvis, which was like both just a great Easter egg, and I adore Jennifer Connelly. So did
that plot device work for you? Because and I get why they did it. I just like
from him at a crucial moment, which I love.
Yeah.
I didn't really like the idea that he was just sort of gifted this amazing Iron Man suit, but then it all fit within the character that he and Ned hack into it and turn off all the safety controls. And then just the fact that it gets taken away from him and he has to, prove to himself that he's worth it. Although that is a little cliched in that sense, it made up for the fact that granted, I didn't want an origin story from Spider-Man again, but it made up for the fact that we didn't get one. It was like, here we are seeing him actually do his thing without the super suit. So I was okay with it. I actually made it okay, because actually in Civil War, I was slightly annoyed that he had this like badass suit that was just sort of gifted to him. So I don't know. I loved it.
Two kind of final notes. I did find it interesting that they kind of uglied up Marissa Tomei just a little bit.
How dare you, sir?
She had the glass. She had like the granny glasses on, more often.
How dare you?
And no, but I say that because in Civil War she was a little too sexy. Like you're just like, that's gonna be
How dare you?
She was. No.
Again. What are you talking about?
If we're talking about the classic Aunt May, Marissa Tomei in Civil War was like the sexy sister Aunt May. Like, and it's just kind of like
she still is. Come on.
No, she is. But they gave her, some mom jeans, and they gave her the granny glasses, and they kind of, there was a couple when she and Peter were on the date. There was some awkwardness to her that I really liked. It made her sort of a little bit more accessible, right? I think that's really hotness is probably the wrong lens to look at this through. It was like she's Marissa Tomei, the actress in Civil War. Here she's like, oh, I could actually see that being, some aunt who lives 2 houses away from me raising her nephew. Like that makes sense to like that would just
Okay, I'll allow it. She's still Aunt Bay to me.
Well, that's fine. And the other thing I was going to mention is that it's nice to have a real multi-dimensional villain, quote unquote, in Michael Keaton who isn't dead. He's just they didn't kill him off. He's still around. He can come back. He can be interesting. I really and God help us, they may actually find a way to do Sinister Six for real. Yeah, who knows? So anyway.
Let's move to another Marvel movie, which we can hit on really quickly. It came out much earlier in the summer, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I liked even more than the first one. But I've discovered since then that I'm sort of in the minority there, even as much as people think it's a great movie. It was released digitally yesterday, and I bought it like instantly. I've just been waiting for this thing. I actually regret not having seen it more than twice in the theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was fantastic. It's like everything I said about Ragnarok, I think ties into that too. Like, I just love that this is now a voice in the Marvel universe. I was skeptical at first, but now it totally fits for me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Infinity War and all that kind of stuff.
I liked Mantis more than I thought I would. I thought she was going to be in the way, and she actually fit in really. Like her and Drax like had some really fun scenes together.
That was some great chemistry. I really liked that.
And I also just dug, it gave Yondu a lot richer. I mean, like
an arc.
He was
great. Story. Yeah.
Well, he was great in the first one too, but like this one, this is not at all what I thought. I thought, if anything, he'd end up being like Nebula's real, biological dad or something, I never thought they would make him like the crucial sentimental character in Peter's life. And I'm like, wow, what a fun, really well done pivot on that character. I just really like I want to go back and watch the first one now with that context. Because I might appreciate it even more.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching Volume 2 again when we end this podcast. Did you see Dunkirk?
No, I didn't, and I'm not going to.
What?
And here's
crazy.
Here's why. I'll summarize it thusly. I'm not okay with the fact that Christopher Nolan isn't working with his former director of photography, Wally Pfizer. Like, it's just not the same. And Interstellar had the same problem. I'm just like, these don't look and feel like Christopher Nolan movies anymore. And I need Wally Pfizer back to really buy in. And then I'm also just not into war movies.
That's understandable. It does feel very much like the cinematography of the Dark Knight series and
Prestige.
Actually Prestige, no, but both, not Batman Begins, but both Dark Knights I saw on IMAX, which they shot portions of on IMAX cameras. And that was just such a unique experience. And so Dunkirk, I went to one of the 70 millimeter IMAX screenings,
Yeah.
And it felt that, you could tell like he knows how to use this medium and how to shoot in this like huge format. I mean, I think it's worth it. I actually had a very difficult time at my viewing of it because I'm in my preferred IMAX theater. I sort of like experiment with like how close I can get to the screen or whatever, because I want to find that medium where I can block out all the people around me, and just have it fill my view. And what I didn't count on was that it was so incredibly loud and like nauseating with its soundtrack, and not to mention like when I was totally enveloped really close to the screen, and there's a lot of water, and what I didn't foresee were a lot of like drownings and potential drownings, and it was fucking terrifying. Like, just to see that and like not be able to escape it, because it's like literally from like edge of my vision to edge of my other vision. It was pretty terrifying. So I actually want to go see it in a quieter, smaller theater. But I do think it has sort of the classic Nolan look to the film. I almost wish it had been a more straightforward movie. There's some interesting like structure they've done with it, where you're watching 3 or 4 scenes unfold at the same time, and it sort of takes a minute before you get that jump. Like the first jump happens, and maybe you don't put it together. Like, oh, this overlaps with that one.
I see. Okay.
And now that I've told you that, you will know when you go see it. But it's a real powerful movie, and so but I do get, if you're just not into like war movies, there's not really a lot there. It could almost have been a movie without dialogue,
Sure. Oh, okay.
And in fact, I think he wanted it to be, or there was some news of like maybe he thought they were going to shoot without a script and just sort of improvise or something, because there's very little that needs to be said. It's like so anyway, did you happen to see Baby Driver?
No, but I really do want to see that one.
Me neither. I feel like such a dumbass for not seeing it. But it came out the weekend before Comic-Con. Game of Thrones came out that same weekend. Then I went to Comic-Con. I just haven't had a chance to catch up. So
it feels like Baby Driver feels like that sort of kind of sleeper hit of the summer, because it kind of came and went, but it was like it had such a little spike in people talking about it and digging it, and digging the soundtrack and the ability. Kevin Spacey's in it. The new Han Solo's in it. It's just like, I think I'll definitely rent it if I don't make it to the theater to see it. But yeah. Cool.
Were there any other movies that you wanted to mention that we haven't caught up on since Wonder Woman?
Yeah, there's 2. One just came out, Dark Tower. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to see it this weekend, and by all accounts, I'm going to probably enjoy it, in the same way I would enjoy just the your bog standard summer movie. By all accounts, it sounds like they got a few things right, but the tone and just the fact that this probably just shouldn't be a movie. A lot of reviews are kind of ragging on it. So I'll be optimistic.
I read something about it's like literally a jumping off point for a series.
Yeah, well, it obviously fills in the gaps of the books and the graphic novels, but then it was supposed to be sort of the tee off to a series on, I think, either Showtime or Stars. I forget who's picking it up, but yeah, they're gonna. So I think McConaughey and Idris Elba have to be in that too, to some extent.
Yeah, so. That's what I read, that like the series is actually going to time jump and tell like the stories of Space Cowboy before the movie happens. Yeah, but they will appear in it sort of in a flashback or flash forward or something like that.
Yeah.
So maybe not regulars, but in it. Yeah. But anyway.
And the other movie, and I'll say the other film that I really want to recommend is one called Endless Poetry. It is the newest work by Alejandro Jodorowsky, who I have made no mistake in showing my love for him on various episodes. The focal point of Jodorowsky's Dune. Very prolific comic writer. Lots of amazing work for this guy. He put out a movie a couple years ago called A Dance of Reality, which is based on his early life as a child in Tocopilla, Chile. And it was a cool, very artsy film where he, a lot of scenes were kind of literal, and then there's a lot of surrealism. I can't even say the word. Surrealism.
Yeah, surrealism.
Surrealistic.
Surrealistic.
You need to cut this entire part out. I can't.
We're not going to do that.
Fuck me. Anyway. Surreal. Yeah. Anyway. God Almighty, this is going to bug me now. But no, it's got some moments in it that are interesting. It's very very artistically driven, but it's he'll enter as himself as an adult director, like comforting his younger self. I liked it, but when he announced he was doing Endless Poetry as the next chapter, focusing more on his early 20s, mid 20s in Santiago, Chile, pursuing the life of trying to become a professional poet, I was more interested, because it just seemed like he had, after being gone for 20 years, he came back to do A Dance of Reality, and it almost felt like he was dusting off the cobwebs a little bit, trying to get back in the groove. And so Endless Poetry, we saw, kind of finally came to Denver to our indie film center here, and it was possibly one of, if not the most beautifully moving films I've ever seen. It just, from the get-go, it invites you in. He uses a lot of theatrical devices. He's got people in black, moving set pieces and props around. And, it's got a very sort of play-like feel to it. but it's just like there's so many beautiful, beautiful moments where he's with his artistic group of friends, or he's talking with other poets about what the life is like, or he's finding his muse at a bar, and she's this overbearing, like hyper type A woman who just beats the shit out of everybody they come into contact with. Just there's so many moments. My favorite one is he meets another fellow poet who's kind of an inspiration for him, and that the two of them start walking, and Alejandro goes, it's like, life can be poetry. If we walk in a straight line, what might we see? And they start walking, and they walk through the town, and he's, they eventually, come across a house. They knock on the house door. They're like, the woman comes up. She's like, "What are you doing?" They're like, we're walking in a straight line. And they explain it to her. Like, "Can we walk through your lovely home?" And so they do. And they just kind of keep going. And they build like a whole sequence around just that idea of kind of enjoying life from that standpoint. It's got its weird shit too. Don't get me wrong. There's some weird, very, intense scenes that you're like, okay, but it's definitely his most accessible movie. And I just like, if you're an artistic person in any way, if you're a creator or writer of any kind, photographer, watch this, because not only is it just technically goddamn amazing, but the spirit of it really will sit with you for a while. Like there's it, especially if you're in your 30s or 40s, where the midlife sort of folks like us, where it's just like, I feel like you'll be re-inspired to do stuff. You'll be, just the whole thing just hits you in an interesting way. It's subtitled, so expect to read, get your reading glasses on, but go see it. It for me was my favorite thing I've seen this summer.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out along with Baby Driver.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that does it for us tonight. Taylor, where can people find you if they want to discuss endless poetry or your opinions on Spider-Man: Homecoming?
Yeah, we can talk about Spider-Man: Homecoming for sure. You find me on Twitter. I'm at Taylor Trask, TaylorTrask. Todd, how about you?
If you want to talk to me about Comic-Con tips, not just San Diego, but a whole bunch of them that I've been to, you can find me on Twitter at HeyToddA. And Taylor and I both do a podcast with our friend Emily Kelly called Wednesday in Westeros, which, as you might imagine, comes out on Wednesdays, and in which we talk about Game of Thrones. And you can find that podcast, Emily's other podcast, which is called Fan Theories, and the Todd and Taylor Show at findusthere.org. not .com.org, and we're on all sorts of social media as Find Us There as well, on Twitter and stuff like that. So follow us in all those places, and I will see you next time, Taylor.
See you, Todd.